Seven, seven, the Magnificent Seven.
Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're here to talk about 1960's The Magnificent Seven, directed by John Sturges, and we're also here today to talk about its new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Shat Select. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, some tech and game reviews along the way, and now we do podcasts, if you're into all that, then this is the channel for you, and nothing would help this channel out more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So The Magnificent Seven was released in 1960, directed by John Sturges, starring Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, amongst a stacked cast. It's a big ensemble cast. And The Magnificent Seven is actually a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai that actually came out here in the United States, which its title at the time in 1955 was The Magnificent Seven. And Yul Brynner and another producer, actually at the time, both of them bought the rights to this movie to make an American remake of it. And I don't know how that happened. Somehow they sold the rights to two separate people, but in the end it all worked out. They came together, and at the time, Yul Brynner, who plays Chris Adams in this movie, was supposed to direct this film. Change of plans happened, Yul Brynner ends up starring it, and John Sturges ends up directing it. And then they really get this great cast of characters together. And this movie, you know, it's one of the most famous Westerns of all time. It's not my personal favorite Western of all time. This came out 4 years before the Dollars trilogy got started. And I think that Sergio Leone and the Spaghetti Western kind of took it on a path that it caters more to what my taste in film is. You know, I prefer more of the anti-hero, whereas this movie, it's really just good versus bad, because the villains in this movie are just downright bad. They come into this small Mexican town, they just take all their food and supplies, and then they just go on their merry way. They just look at this town as just absolute nothing. You know, it's filled with people who aren't considered the strongest of people. They're farmers, you know, they're very worried. They just care about the people in their town, you know, protecting their wives and their children. Even if their children and wives don't appreciate them doing that, that's exactly what they're there to do, which is a nice little moral message in this movie, actually. Not everybody has to be the gunslinger. You know, someone has to be the farmer, and I did appreciate that in this movie. Especially in 1960, because in 1960, not only that, you know, when we first meet Chris Adams, Yul Brynner in this movie, the fact that they wouldn't bury a Native American in their cemetery, it's just pretty disgusting. So it's pretty cool that he stood up to that and was willing to even get shot for it, because it's like, a man's a man, a man's dead, you know. He deserves to be buried. And I appreciated that. This is a 63-year-old movie, so it's pretty crazy that we're still dealing with some of the same issues that this movie was tackling 63 years ago. This small town decides that, hey, we need to save our town. They find Chris Adams, Yul Brynner, and Yul Brenner's like, you know, it's cheaper to hire men than it is to buy guns. And he's like, well, will you come? And Chris Adams like, not me, but I'll put the word out. And then there we go. Now we're assembling our team. This is where we meet Charles Bronson, Steve McQueen, and everybody else. We meet Chico, who actually becomes one of my favorite characters in this movie, because, you know, it's a 2-hour-8 movie, so we have to establish all 7 of these men and what their specialty is and, you know, what their personalities are. And I think that they do a good job of spending time with each of these men and each of their, like, little lives before they all come together. I actually found the most interesting story arcs in this movie to be Yul Brynner's character, Chico, and I think Charles Bronson. And Charles Bronson, you know, he's not one of my favorite actors. And at this point in 1960, he wasn't the biggest actor in the world, actually. I don't know if I think he got like 3rd or 4th billing. Obviously, Steve McQueen is what sells this film. In 1960, Steve McQueen was on top of the world, and he had one of my least favorite arcs throughout this entire film. And he's one of the 3 people that ends up surviving, but really, for me, it was Charles Bronson's character. I really loved his interactions with these 3 boys who ended up, they got assigned to him. So if he ends up dying, which is a really funny joke, they'll leave fresh flowers on his grave every day. But they end up building this nice little relationship. We find out about Charles Bronson's real name, and they just get this nice little bond. And then in the end, he ends up sacrificing himself for these 3 boys. And he says, you know, look at your fathers. Like, look at them, like, out there defending themselves. Like, that's something you should be proud of. You should be proud of your father. I love that arc. It was in this big, broad story, and I loved it. I thought Charles Bronson's arc was personally my favorite in the entire movie. And then Chico's arc too, from the way he starts to the way he ends up, it's perfect. I think they did an amazing job with those arcs. So unfortunately, not everybody gets that same kind of treatment. You know, Harry doesn't get that kind of treatment. He's really just in it for the gold. You know, this story might not seem original now, but back in 1960 this was. So many movies have been influenced by it, have borrowed from it. How many movies have you seen when we have to get this big group of people together to come save this town or city or something like that? I mean, the Avengers is pretty much the Magnificent Seven. 1989's Roadhouse is basically the same kind of story, but instead of 7 guys, it's 1 guy. The greatest bouncer in the world is going to come in and save this small town. I mean, this is a movie that just has had such an influence on Hollywood and films in general since 1960. The score, I haven't spoken about the score yet. It's one of the greatest scores of all time. And again, I feel like that had an influence on many other scores in the future, like that very adventurous score. Like, I watched this and I'm like, I can see John Williams being a little influenced by this for when he got to Indiana Jones. At least that's how I personally felt about it. And, you know, all that started here. You know, even if you're not the biggest fan of this film, like, I really did enjoy my time with this film, but it's not going to crack my top 10 personal westerns of all time. I just need a little bit more grit to it than what this is. This is just too much good versus bad, and that's fine. You know, I always enjoy one of those stories, but if I'm going to pick my favorite westerns, there's got to be some sort of, you know, anti-hero aspect, or, you know, just some dirtiness or grittiness to it. And this, you know, it has a little bit of that, but not enough for me to be saying, hey, this is my favorite western of all time or one of my favorites. I still think it's a good movie, and if you're a cinephile and you've never checked this movie out, this is one of those ones that you have to see in your lifetime just to have a broader understanding of film history in general and the influence it's had on the film industry. And if you do want to check this out, well, Shout Select just released a brand new 4K Blu-ray, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So Shout Select, you know, I'm always very confused with Scream Factory, Shout Factory, and what they're doing. Shout Select is kind of their releases of old classic films, and Shout Select kind of is all over the place. I had a Shout Select version of Rollerball earlier in this year that I reviewed, had no slipcover on it, was 1 disc. And then you get to this Shout Select release, and it's 2 discs, got a 4K to Blu-ray, and they put a really nice slipcover on it. Actually kind of looks like the Kino Lorber slipcovers. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but, you know, Kino Lorber does put out a lot of classic films. That's kind of what they do. That's kind of their bread and butter, is, you know, preserving old films. But Shout Select has their own brand that does that. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a little bit influenced by Kino with this slipcover design. But anyway, you slide this beautiful slipcover off. You get the same artwork underneath. Now, if you're a Shout Factory or Scream Factory fan and you're wondering, is there a reversible slip art? There is not. This is it. It's just white underneath. You get your 4K and your Blu-ray disc, individual disc design, which I always absolutely 110% appreciate. So the scan of this is actually not a brand new 4K scan. It's actually a previous 4K scan with new color grading on it. Now, I don't know where that previous 4K scan is. From what I was able to find, this is the first 4K release. Maybe they released it in theaters somewhere. This is not a brand new scan. It's an older scan, just with some new color grading on it. And on top of that, you get Dolby Vision and you get HDR10. And this is going to be presented to you in your aspect ratio of 2.35. So you're going to get the black bars on the top and bottom of your screen. And I compared the 4K and the Blu-ray in this. So I think that the Blu-ray is actually just a compressed version of this 4K based on the fact that it has the same audio tracks on there, the same menu system. And it looked like it's a pretty good Blu-ray compared to the 4K. Now the Blu-ray itself is not the greatest. It's a little flat. It's a little dimmer compared to the 4K, but it is a good Blu-ray. So that 4K then, I thought it was great. I actually think it looks a little bit better with the Dolby Vision because I tested them both out. I think the Dolby Vision does help it to give it a little bit of an edge over the HDR, but the HDR is still really good. And the biggest noticeable difference between the 4K and the Blu-ray is the brightness. So a lot of these scenes take place in the day, and that blue sky is just going to be a lot brighter on your 4K compared to your Blu-ray. And the fact is, because of the Dolby Vision, you're going to get more contrast, and the brights are going to be brighter and the darks are going to be darker, so it's going to look a lot better on your screen. Now, it's a 1960 film, so don't go into this expecting the greatest visual 4K you've ever seen. They can't fix everything. It's still going to have a little bit of a dull look to it like most 1960s films do, especially since we're early in color, so you can't really expect them to have the best looking visuals. But they did a great job. This is definitely the best this film has ever looked. I'm sure this is probably the best they can probably get it to look. And I really do think that they nailed the visuals. Again, I think the Dolby Vision is slightly better than that HDR, so if you can watch it in Dolby Vision, I recommend that. And the Blu-ray itself is not bad in here. It's just not as good as that 4K, so, you know, it's good that you get the 4K in the Blu-ray, and maybe you just want to check out the Blu-ray and compare it yourself, but I think that the 4K is definitely a noticeable difference over that Blu-ray. And now as far as audio tracks goes, there's actually 3 of them on here, and it's going to start out in the mono track. These are all DTS tracks, HD master audio tracks. So you're going to get a mono track, which is this original mono track. You're going to get a 5.1 surround on here, and you're also going to get a 2.0 stereo. So it starts in the mono. I actually chose to check it out one of my main viewing in the 5.1, and the 5.1, not the greatest use of rears. You really only get use of rears when it comes to the score. Other than that, it's still a very front heavy, dialogue heavy movie. Everything came in crystal clear. The dialogue was clear as it can be. There is no clicks, no hiss, nothing like that. It's all cleaned up, perfectly clear, as good as you can expect for a 1960 film, and that goes on all 3 tracks. They cleaned all that up. It's really just going to come down to personal preference. If there's a 5.1, that's always going to be my choice, but if people want to watch this in its original mono track, it's there. If you want it in 2 channels, the stereo track is there. So you have plenty of options, which is really cool. I'm really glad that they gave the options on here. You know, most movies might skip that, might only give you 2, but to get 3 choices, yeah, I can really appreciate that. It just shows the little bit of extra effort that went into this. Now the extras, which are all going to be on your Blu-ray disc, are a little bit limited. They're all previously released extras, but there is a great making of documentary on here. It's about 47 minutes long, and I think that documentary, given not a new documentary, is great. It really does take you through every aspect of the making of this movie, and those are just always my favorite extras. I love an edited together documentary about the making of a movie. For me, that is always going to be the best extra you can put on any disc. I know some people always would prefer audio commentary tracks, and audio commentary tracks are great. I like them every once in a while too, but if you can get a good making of documentary on here, I'm always going to say, you know what, the extras are at least worth it, even if it's an older documentary. So, you know, it's kind of hit or miss. I feel like these extras aren't the greatest, but they did work for me, so it's going to come down to personal preference there, because it is a very limited amount of extras. Don't expect that much. It's really just about a handful, and one of them, of course, is the trailer for the movie. So, you know, they love to throw that on there just to promote that they put it on there, like we all don't have YouTube in 2023 where we can just watch any trailer we want at the click of a button. But anyway, I understand what they're going for, and the extras are pretty good on here. So overall, I was very happy with my experience of the Magnificent Seven. You know, for the price of $27 at the time of this recording, that really isn't bad. Like I said, Shout Factory seems to always come in at that $27 price range, even if the packages don't always add up. Sometimes you don't get the slipcover, but they always come in around that price. At least this time I can say that the $27 is justified, because you do get 2 discs, you get a slipcover on there, and they really did put a lot of effort into making this 4K look the best it could possibly look here in 2023. So overall, I'm very happy with my purchase. And if I was going to grade this on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm still going to give this a really solid 8.5. You know, I take a little bit of points off because, like I said, not my favorite movie of all time, not my favorite Western of all time. You know, the audio tracks are decent. They're not the greatest, but they really do a good job of cleaning this up. The visuals, I think, are awesome. I think they did a great job, you know, again, cleaning this up. It's going to look the best it ever could look, in my opinion. You know, and the extras, you know, they're going to seem definitely weak to some people, but I was pretty happy with them. So overall, I'm very happy with my purchase, and I definitely think that you guys will be too. And if you do want to actually grab this, we will leave our Amazon affiliate link in the description below, because that really does help the channel out if you buy through that link. And it costs no extra money for you, and it really does help the channel out so we can keep bringing you these 4K Blu-ray reviews. And anyway, guys, if you are interested in helping us out, really nothing helps this channel out more than by simply just liking this video, subscribing to the channel, searching for us on all podcast services, subscribing to us there, giving us a 5-star rating for a couple of 5-star men, and then after you finish doing all that, grab your cowboy hat, run out into those streets, and tell all your friends about us.